So today I have the immense pleasure and joy of sitting down with astrologers Jessica and Travis DiRuzza. Hi, Jessica and Travis. How are you both doing?
We're doing really well. We're super happy to be here with you.
Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. I first discovered your work, Jessica, in some videos you have made many years ago. There was one with about Chiron that resonated with me really deeply, and from that moment, I started following your work, and I believe it was around 2018 or 19 that I had the privilege of taking one of your courses on archetypal astrology, and I've been a devoted follower of both of you ever since here in France, in my corner of the world. And I absolutely adore how you effortlessly weave together astrology, psychology, creativity, and so much more in your astrological approach. So thank you so much both for being here. And I know how incredibly busy you are, not just with your work, but also with your beautiful family, especially since you have welcomed your second child. So your willingness to take some time out of your, I'm sure, packed schedule means a great deal to me. So I'm truly grateful. And also, I'm very happy that you are going to be my first episode. So, let's start with the first question. The first question is, could you present yourself to all the people that maybe don't know who you are?
Yeah, definitely. It's an honor to be here with you, Sophia. And we come to you from a place called Siesta Key in Florida. And I am a depth psychotherapist and archetypal astrologer and also an educator. So I both have a private practice where I work with individuals and couples from all around the world, all walks of life, where I incorporate astrology into that. And then I'm also an educator with my husband Travis. We run an online astrology school called Trust Psyche. And we offer courses from beginner to advanced or professional. And one of our favorite things to do, one of my favorite things to do, is to guide and mentor people into how they can weave astrology more into their life, whether that's personally or professionally, and especially therapists and coaches who are wanting to integrate it
Mm,
as not just a modality or tool, but really a worldview
yeah.
into their work.
Mm, great. And you, Travis?
Yeah, I'm Travis DiRuzza. I'm an astrologer, a counselor, a scholar, a teacher, father. Um, and yeah, I did my undergrad at Columbia University. I got my master's, my PhD from the California Institute of Integral Studies, where I met Jessica.
Yeah, you
Just
were both together, right? Yeah, at
about
that
12
time.
years ago now, we're
Mm,
celebrating
yeah.
the Jupiter return
Mm,
of our relationship. That's where we started Trust Psyche together. Um, and I love, yeah, working in the school together, and also giving astrology readings, doing counseling sessions with individuals, with couples, and also doing astrological mentoring,
mm.
um, one-on-one and in the classroom setting. So it's just a joy to be here with you today, Sophia, and we're so happy to bring our work and to bring Trust Psyche to your channel.
And I will put all the links below to everyone who wants to follow you on Instagram, know your school, and all the links will be below. So, could you give us your big three? Of course, there are a lot of things in a birth chart, we all know, but it's like when you meet someone, maybe the first thing that if you want to start a conversation in regards to astrology, maybe that's where everyone starts. So if you have maybe a narrative or an image, something that comes when you think about your big three.
I have a fun idea, so I'm gonna do yours if you want.
Okay.
Okay, so all right,
Great.
so I like surprising him. Okay, so Travis's big three is he's Sun in Cancer, Moon in Cancer, and Virgo rising, and so he's born on an eclipse.
Mm,
And I think the double Cancer, I just get this image of such a loving father, but that is very maternal and nourishing and nurturing and tending to the home and all of your loved ones in the home, friends and family. But the Virgo is that amazing taskmaster who keeps everything in order and keeps everything, working just so and properly. So that's how I see it.
That goes so well. Plus, the energy of Virgo that enables to nourish with the double Cancer energy there. Wonderful.
You should see me in the kitchen.
Oh yeah. It's both abundant and clean at the same time.
Great. My husband is Cancer with Virgo ascendant.
Oh,
So you know all about it.
He is a Capricorn moon, but
Okay.
that brings
Oh,
a little bit of
wonderful.
earth to all that, to all those emotions there also. So
Oh.
yeah, it's funny.
Well, you get a little mix of both of us.
Yeah.
Jessica is Capricorn Sun, Moon Aries, and Pisces rising. So first, just like a little meta comment about this question of narratives of the big three, like with someone like me who has, two of those in Cancer, it kind of has a strong direction to it. Our daughter likewise has a lot of air, a lot of Mercury in her big three. So it kind of has a clear direction. But Jessica and also our son have three different elements in their big three. And I think that just creates a different kind of dynamic. There's this balance, this dynamism of those pulling in these different directions, earth, fire, and water in Jessica's big three. And I think, her Capricorn, she has drive. She has far-reaching vision. She sees the big picture, and I think the Pisces supports this too. A lot of times we think about our Pisces-Virgo axis opposite one another on our ascendants, and I kind of think that Jessica is kind of the visionary that sees the big picture, and I'm really good at executing it on the ground and being like, well, how do we actually make this work? Her Aries moon brings a playfulness and a fire to everything that she does.
Feisty.
Feisty.
Maybe
And
that's
she,
yeah.
she
That's
feels
when
like she's like 6 years old and 60 years old at the same time.
yeah, of course, Kara. And maybe that's what I saw also because I have Jupiter in Aries, maybe next to your moon. Who knows? It's at 15 degrees, mine. 15.
Oh, sweet. My moon's at 25, but my north node's at 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
My Jupiter is on your nodes.
Yeah, I
Wonderful.
love that.
That's why we are here.
Yeah, it's actually on all of our nodes because Travis's nodes are at 13 Capricorn Cancer. So we form a big grand cross, and your Jupiter's on that. I love that.
Great. So the next question is, how would you define astrology and especially your own practice of astrology? Of course, for someone who maybe doesn't know much about it or just a little.
I think most simply, I would define astrology as a meaningful correspondence between the sky and the earth. I think you can take this really broad definition and all the more particular forms of astrology fit into it. But I love that definition because it even harkens back to like the early archaeological, astronomical stone circles, these kind of things that date back to Stonehenge and before. And you see that very early on in civilization, humans are making this meaningful connection between astronomical events up in the sky and meaningful cultural practices here on Earth. And, I love connecting my modern day archetypal astrological approach all the way back to these earliest, lookings up and down and saying there's a meaningful connection between these two realms.
That's beautiful because sometimes we, in astrology, we don't go, or we only go back at a moment when we are learning the history of astrology, and then we forget about it, or it's something we don't bring a lot to the table about it. And that idea of maybe looking at the same skies that those of us who were before us, that's really meaningful, I think. And what about you, Jessica?
What he said. I'm at the point where I don't know how to answer that question anymore. I feel like I don't know anymore what astrology is. I've been doing it for 18 years, so I'm coming into my nodal return of being with it. And I just feel like I want to like listen to what everyone um, feels astrology is so that I can like relearn what it is for myself at this point in the journey.
Love
So
that.
yeah, that's where I'm at right now with it.
Beginner's mind.
Yeah.
And how did you become an astrologer? Sorry. What was your journey? How it came? What was your calling? Sometimes I say that because I think that when we become an astrologer, I don't know if you agree with it, but we are in some kind called to it, not really searching for it, or we don't think we are doing it consciously. Um,
That makes
what
me teary-eyed thinking about it. Yeah, actually, I discovered astrology during an eclipse. I was at Burning
mm,
Man in the Nevada desert. I was 20 years old, and at the time, doing a lot of psychedelics, a lot of plant medicine, and really questioning everything. I left home and very distraught, like needing to uh, understand desperately what's going on here, with
mm,
having existence and being a human and, you know, where do we come from and why are we here? And I was deconstructing everything that I could, that I was taught in school or that my parents taught me, because I knew that there was more than what they gave me, but I also knew there was more than what our civilization in its current form was giving me. And I discovered astrology at Burning Man, and it felt like a moment I'd been waiting my whole life for. It was a deep process of remembrance. It resonated so fully that my soul knew that this was one of those moments that was predestined for me.
mm.
And I had that awareness while it was happening. And so, because of that, um, I devoted my entire life to learning and practicing and then sharing astrology from that moment forward, and have been doing it every
Ever
day ever
since.
since.
Mm.
Give you the quick sketch. Jessica and I are both Sun Neptune individuals, so we
Mm,
both strongly identify as spiritual seekers. I think both of us felt like our whole life we were groping towards
mhm,
something. I had some strong religious moments as a kid, was like an evangelical Christian for a while, and then kind of threw it all out the window and was an atheist all throughout college. But I came upon Rick Tarnas's first book, Rick Tarnas, who does the archetypal astrological approach, pioneered it, who Jessica and I studied with out in California. And a teacher put his book into my hands, his book on Western philosophy, when I was a senior in high school. And I loved
mm,
this book so much. I kept coming back to it, read it several times. And all of my seeking took me across the world. And one day I was in a bookstore in Bangkok and I came across Rick's second book that had just been published called Cosmos and Psyche,
Thank you.
A Defense of Astrology. I knew nothing about astrology. I thought, as he says, it was the gold standard of superstition. But I loved his first book so much, I said, I got to hear what this guy has to say about this. And it was that same summer of 2007. Meanwhile, Jessica is at Burning Man at the
Mm,
same moment,
Moment,
the same
yeah.
month that I'm in Bangkok, and we're both discovering astrology. Um,
the same astrology.
Same astrology,
Yeah,
same
plus, yeah.
astrologer. We both seek it out,
Mm,
end up in California. Um, and the rest is history.
I was
mm.
his teacher. Come on.
That's right.
You saw me on YouTube and you said, I
Mhm.
gotta go where this woman
That's
is.
right. So
And
on YouTube years before,
do
like a
you
moth to the
remember?
flame.
Sorry.
Do you remember if there was a transit or something, the planetary transit that was uh touching your planets at that moment?
Hmm. Um, Uranus was going over my ascendant and approaching his descendant, and I think there
Mm,
was a Saturn Uranus. Um, was it opposition? I can't remember. No, couldn't have been at the time.
2007.
Wow, you'd think I would remember this forever. I'm pretty sure there was. And it was the very, very, very beginning opening act of the Uranus square Pluto. You know, it was
Yeah.
just starting to come in.
Mm.
And we're both trying to catch that wave
Yeah.
because it was foretold.
Yeah. Rick really talks up this alignment in his
Yeah.
book. You know, I felt like I have to get out there to California before this Uranus Pluto ends. And I did, and that Uranus Pluto was on Jessica and I have Sun opposite Moon in Cancer Capricorn, and that Uranus Pluto was going over that. And
Yeah.
when we fell in love at Burning Man in 2013, Jupiter and Venus were forming a grand cross with that one.
Okay. Wonderful. And do you stay informed about developments, revivals in the field of astrology? Do you think it's important? It's something important for astrologers to do so also? Do you continue to study even basic concepts that you already know? What ideas do you have around that?
Yeah, I mean, this is really mostly Travis's department. He's the one that does all of this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's super important to stay abreast of what's happening. You know, I've loved watching the Hellenistic revival. And at the same time, you know, I think there's a value to staying in your room and doing it your way. And taking, you know, taking what serves you from all these new things that are popping off and trying to create something that's fresh. And to that end, like, yeah, coming back to basic concepts, I really enjoyed teaching this course on the aspects that we did with Jessica, you know, and at first brush, you're kind of like, oh, the aspects, it's, you know, it's one of the simplest concepts in astrology. You know, how are we going to do a whole course on this? But we really slowed down and drilled down into the history, but also just all the things that the aspects open upon, you know, mathematical ratios, music, geometry. And it was a really lovely experience to take a simple basic concept and unfold it in all these different ways. And it's just such a reminder that just even the simplest tenets of astrology are so deep. And I really think about archetypal astrology as a kind of reform movement in a way that, like, let's get back to basics.
Yeah.
You know, the simple, you know, classic Ptolemaic aspects are great and tell us so much without getting into septiles and minor aspects. I think all that has a place, and I think it's but one of the things I love about archetypal astrology is this kind of democratization of astrology. It makes it more accessible to more people because it doesn't get super, super complicated right away.
And it touches so many fields. I love that too. Yeah, absolutely. This next question, you have already touched a little bit about it, but maybe you have some others to tell us. Are there any astrologers or books that have particularly influenced your work, and which ones and why?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Richard Tarnas?
Yeah, Rick for sure. And then also Dane Rudhyar is like a part of that lineage. The Astrology of Transformation changed my life. It really anchored my worldview and my cosmology. Always have loved Astrology, Karma, and Transformation by
Arroyo.
Yeah.
Stephen Arroyo, I think.
That one has been also deeply meaningful for me early on to just soak more into I would call it the inner coherent narrative of every planet and understanding why all the different facets of Saturn interrelate to one another. I really like understanding each planetary archetype as its own metaphysical universe and seeing it as an interconnected whole that is deeply intelligent and meaningful and purposeful. And so those folks helped me get there.
Yeah, two books that I would mention first, you know, continuing with this historical trend. My favorite history of Western astrology is by Nicholas Campion, just called A History of Western Astrology in 2 volumes.
Two volumes.
and he was the one who really got me into this astroarchaeological approach, and just, starting the history of astrology way back, thousands and thousands of years before Hellenistic astrology, which was kind of the backbone of the astrology we practice today. Hellenistic astrology, you're talking around the turn of the millennium, around 100, but the stone circles date back to 5,000, 10,000 BCE. So I think it's so rich to study the history of our art and how that can inform, revivals that are happening, and can kind of breathe new life into the astrology that's happening now by looking backward. Secondly, I'd mentioned Jeffrey Cornelius's book, The Moment of Astrology.
Yeah.
Yeah, another interest of mine is the metaphysics of astrology. How does this work? What's the mechanism of action? If we really slow down and think philosophically about this, what's going on? And I think he's done some really amazing work there of kind of unpacking the assumptions that stretch back to Ptolemy, and saying, what's actually going on here? Are the planets doing something to us? Is it just a kind of symbolic correspondence? And if we say those two things, what does that really mean?
That's, yeah.
No, go ahead,
No,
please.
go ahead, Jessica.
I'd be remiss if I didn't add in Caroline Casey. I come from the oral tradition, and she is such a wonderful storyteller. And she had an audio that she recorded a long time ago of all the signs and the houses and the planets, and I just listened to that over and over again. And I really appreciate all the ones who keep astrology alive through the oral tradition.
Now, I was just going to say that at the moment, it's funny because I'm very interested in the philosophy of astrology, and I'm doing a course for my students here in France that is going to start in September, and I'm writing an ebook at the moment on the philosophy of astrology, and it's fascinating, everything that and new connections being made with principles from Heraclitus and all of that. I love that.
Oh, I'll be very excited to read your work.
I will send it to you with pleasure. I think that this next question is connected to what we have just said a little bit. What other types of knowledge inform and nourish your astrological practice? And do you think that's a major key element for any astrologer who wants to develop their approach and practice of astrology? You are both, you work in the psychology field also, so that informs also how your approach also to astrology. Although maybe when we think about it, even in ancient times, there are always been psychology in it, although we didn't say the word psychology at the time. But do you have any other fields that inform your astrology, nourish it?
I think once we really learn the fundamentals of astrology, and we're both naturally called to, but I also think it's ethically imperative that we deepen our psychological knowledge and understanding. I also think that it's important to do that and deepen into really trying to understand our metaphysics, because when we are interpreting a chart, one of the greatest things that's coming through in the way in which we interpret, whether that's for ourselves or for others, is our metaphysics. And I think we really owe it to ourselves and our own spiritual path, but to everyone else that we get to have the honor to sit with and talk about their chart, that we understand why we think astrology is happening the way that it's happening. Let's bring up Pluto transits. Why is there a process of death and rebirth? Why is there an intensity and an extreme quality to this transit? How do we talk about it in a way that honors the nature of the transit and the reason why we go through it, versus, potentially projecting fear onto somebody because we don't really have a deep grasp of why this is happening. So for me, it's studying psychology because this is really about being human, but also, bodies of work like Chris Beisch, and understanding reincarnation and understanding morphogenetic fields and, looking at life between lives and, being able to also hold that spiritual space, I think is most of the joy of what astrology can bring us.
Love that. Yeah. Michael Newton's work on lives between lives and Rupert Sheldrake's work on morphogenetic fields. Yeah, personally, I had a history as a musician. I was a professional musician for about a decade, and so music has always been a big
Yeah.
part of, how does vibration, how does the vibration of sound, how is that similar to the vibration of the periodicity of the planets circling the sun? And kind of finding like how does vibration show up all over the world? And I think, that's a personal example for me of how, astrology connects to everything.
Yeah.
Astrology is this kind of master blueprint or master template that can help bring insight and a kind of telescope or microscope to any other field. And so in another one of the courses that we taught together, originally it was called Deepen Your Astrological Practice. Now it's called the Planetary Pairs, a little more transparent name. We took all the 45 combinations of planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Pluto, and not only did Jessica teach on them and teach psychologically about them, but I created a piece of music for each one. And we worked with a dancer who did a dance for each one. And there was poetry and paintings. And so we tried to learn about these archetypes, not just through lists of adjectives or, descriptions, but how does it feel in your body? How does it sound in your ears? How does it look on the canvas? I think this is both, cool ways to access the archetypes and to see them more richly and multicolored, but also a way in reverse to access life through astrology and see that the archetypes, illuminate every facet of life around us. So I think it's absolutely important, and I encourage everyone, whatever their other interest is, in addition to astrology, like it's so rich to bring your expertise in something else together with astrology.
Absolutely. So important. And I'm a plastician in French, so I think it's visual artist or something like that in English. And yeah, creativity is something that is so important, and so it helps you feel astrology, not only reason or think about as you said, in terms of keywords or something like that, but yeah, actually feel what is going around you and inside you. I think it's really something very powerful to do. I will be doing that with my students, doing creativity journals about the planets, the signs. So I think it's going to be, on that idea also.
I love imagining a sculpture of each planet.
Yeah.
What would it look like as a body type?
That would be, great. I even thought about, because it's something that I love to do, also doing knitting or embroidery, bringing the textile arts, so important, the crafts, also to the way of how we can feel astrology. Yeah, also. So as you are both in the field of psychology, how do you approach sensitive issues or potentially difficult or challenging transits, progressions in a consultation?
Yeah, I mean, this is
a broader question. It's really, really big, I know.
Yeah, it's a huge part of, what actually got me to study psychology. Was one of the first readings I ever gave. The client was actively suicidal, and I just had never dealt with anything like that. I was 21 years old, and it was terrifying. And I remember in the session, I just took a really deep breath and like tried to anchor myself in the earth and just be present to what this person needed to share. And in that moment, I realized, wait a second, this is inherently not only a psychoactivating thing to talk about somebody's chart, but because we're talking about human lives, and human lives are deep and complex and filled with suffering, that we need to be able to feel really comfortable talking about the hard stuff, including suicide. And so, whatever, I love what Mr. Rogers said. He said, if it's part of the human experience, then we need to be able to talk about it.
Mm.
And I think that that goes for any combination in a chart or any transit, no matter what it looks like or what it is. We need to be able to talk about it in a way that is kind and empathetic, where we have our own uh, internal felt sense of what it might be like for that person to be living with that aspect or be going through a certain alignment, and to speak from the inside of that experience instead of from the outside. Because once we do that, it creates often a hierarchy, it creates potential for judgment, it creates potential for shaming that person, and it creates the potential for that person to think that we somehow, as a voice of God, is pronouncing something about them that they may or may have not even shared with us, but are interpreting from the way that we're speaking, that we somehow are casting judgment on, who they are or what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just feel like at the end of the day, we're just human beings trying our best. And like, we need to be able to talk about hard things in a way that's not scary.
I love that, Jess.
I can deal with reality, but I can't deal with fear on top of reality.
Yeah.
No, there's a big difference in that for me.
Mm.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
add to that, like
Yeah.
helping bring trust
Mm.
in the combinations, in the transits to the client, and being a voice of affirmation of the universe and kind of like belief in the goodness of the universe at the bottom of it all. And yeah, not fear mongering around transits and not talking in these negative ways. And it's like, oh, I'm so scared of this Saturn transit or Pluto transit. And trying to bring trust that, yeah, there's going to be challenges with certain transits. But if you lean into it and you meet it and you accept it and you're ready to grow with it, it will be for your soul's best, highest calling.
Yeah. And they also come to be listened to, I think also. That's so important to listen, because sometimes there are, well, I have already experience, of course, where I've had also consultations with other astrologers, and sometimes there's something like you arrive and blah, 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 blah. They will tell you a ton of things, but are they really listening? And I think that's important,
Yeah.
in this field.
Yeah, attunement.
Mm.
Astrology, logos of the stars, it's a language, and in order to be able to speak anything fluently, we must first know how to listen. And so when a client comes in and they sit down, can we actually just tune into who they are and where they're at, take this incredible knowledge we have of astrology, and do the art of actually serving that person in that moment with what's going on for them on that day, with this huge cosmic perspective. And it's challenged to bring something so big and
Definitely.
actually tailor it so that person feels heard and seen by you, which then, if you do a really good job at it, makes them feel heard and seen by the universe. And that's, being held by the universe, being seen by the universe, I think, is what we are all looking for.
I think this piece around listening too, it's like joining with the client and listening to the archetypes together. Instead of pronouncing this is what the transit means, can we create a space where we're doing deep listening? I mean, I love the image of experiencing a transit is kind of like supplicating yourself before the altar of that God, and praying and listening, and offering a sacrifice upon that altar to show your respect and welcome that God into you, and be transformed by it.
Yeah, and it's so enchanting also, that idea. It brings the re-enchantment of some kind of, cosmos.
As our 4-year-old screams with joy in the background. Don't worry, there is an adult with her.
Okay. So what do you prefer in astrology? I guess I know that already, your answer. The subjective experience or the technique, and why? And do you have a favorite technique? And which one is, if so?
Oh, that's a hard question. You start it, I'll pick up.
I mean, my ultimate answer would be falling back on what I was saying earlier about I'm really a fan of keeping it simple so that
Mm.
there can be room for the subjectivity to breathe, for the archetypes to speak. Um, I'm very curious about more complicated techniques, secondary progressions, primary directions. Um, but honestly, my personal experience is that, and Jessica says this, they don't seem to give me more information than what was
Mm,
already there with, the aspects and the
yeah.
planets and signs and houses. I think there's a narrative there. And as you go deeper with these techniques, you don't really get new information. You get reiterations of this narrative. And I
Mm,
think you see similar themes keep
I
popping
love
up.
that.
That could be confirmation, and that can
Mhm.
be helpful in that sense. But I haven't had the experience that I embrace some new technique like zodiacal releasing, and all of a sudden it tells me something that wasn't already
Mm,
there in my chart and
yeah.
transits. I think some people would disagree with me, but that is my experience.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's sometimes we add too much, and it's funny because I think sometimes we can also drive a little bit of the astrology when we go to too much technique. A little bit is needed, of course, but yeah, we can go into some kind of dryness, and I think that takes all the purpose of it, maybe.
I'm most called to going as deep as possible into each archetype, whether that archetype is a planet or a sign or a house or an aspect, the four pillars of astrology there. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like whatever it is, I want to go as deep into that as I possibly can. The fundamentals are like 10% of the practice. The other 90% of it is truly our ability to become as intimate and as communed and as fluent as possible in the archetypes. And what I love to do is I love to listen to the person speak. And then when I look at their chart at the same time, the chart rises off the
Yeah.
page and it starts like a line weaving between the different places. I listen to the person speak, I see the connection, and when they're done speaking, then I reflect back what I was being shown from their
Mm-hmm.
chart and, you know, digest what they say and then present it back to them and as a mirror, but then also kind of takes it further and saying, and so, you know, not only is
Mm-hmm.
this what I'm seeing, but this is where it's going. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, that's a lot more fascinating than any technique. And if I could be vulgar for a second, um, I think that oftentimes when people get so focused on technique, especially when they think theirs is the right one, it's a compensation for some feeling of insecurity around
Mm-hmm.
not being totally at home in themselves or comfortable in the practice and trying to, it makes me want to cry, control life, control what's happening with the astrology, and that's just not how this works. And so I actually have a real problem with complicated, overly clever techniques.
Mm-hmm.
I think the techniques you do practice, you should do perfectly, and you should, know your technique that you use inside and out. There's no excuse for being sloppy.
Yeah.
Liking interpretation isn't it, doesn't mean you can be sloppy with your technique.
Your Virgo is
Where's your spreadsheet?
But at the same time, technique will never replace depth of interpretation. And
yeah.
yeah, it threatens to paper over the mystery of the divine.
Mm-hmm. And it's so wonderful when the person is speaking and we see the archetypes like if they take on life from the chart, and we see clearly, oh, okay, I'm absolutely seeing your Mercury talking to your Pluto there in that phrase. That's wonderful. I do love the archetypal images we can have from those.
It never gets
Yeah,
every reading. It's like
yeah.
amazed. Like I see your chart as you speak.
And as an astrologer, what boundaries do you set for yourself in a consultation, and what do you think is, and do you think that is important for astrologers to do that and to know about, of course, boundaries?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Boundaries, please, everybody. I love boundaries. You know, as a Sun Neptune and a Pisces rising, I've had to work really hard on my boundaries. And it is something that I think relates into the ethical dimension of practicing astrology and an ethic of care for oneself and for others. This work we can easily overgive and undervalue. We can definitely have a tendency to be prone to projection, and also you know, you likely don't come to astrology unless either you've had your own trauma that in your life that you've had to deal with, or somehow have become a caretaker, or the one who, you know, was the emotionally intelligent person in the family, or, you know, the identified patient, or whatever it might be. And so, because of all that, we have to be really protective of our space, of our time, of our energy, because this is sacred. And so, boundaries, what is the Prentice Hemphill say? Boundaries are the distance at which I can love myself and you at the same time. And without that, you know, fundamental to compassion, so a very kind of Saturn Neptune understanding, is boundaries. Like true compassion includes boundaries. And I think we have to have compassion in this work. And so therefore we have to have boundaries. Honoring time, honoring the fee. We need to stick to the time. We need to charge appropriately. We need to value our work. Those things are essential for this practice.
Wonderful. I like that, because that will inform maybe some astrologers or students of astrology who are starting, who sometimes they really do have questions around that.
Yeah, a related topic that brings up for me is kind of what astrology can tell us and what it can't tell us. Like, what are the boundaries of astrology itself? And this is really important ethically as an astrologer. You know, what can the chart tell me and what can't it tell me? Because clients will often pull for things that maybe you can't tell them. And I think being really clear in your own head as an astrologer, you know, what it can tell you and what it can't, helps you to be an ethical astrologer. And I think it's just important that just the simple thing that astrology can't tell you everything. There's a narrative to life. There's this time directional thing where the decisions we make have consequences, and there's this whole history that lies behind you that comes up to the present moment, and that could have gone differently. And the chart, I think that comes together with transits in the moment, but you know, astrology can't tell you every detail about a life, and you know what hangs on that timeline tail that comes up behind you.
And when you actually take this in, what it does is when a client asks you or a student asks you, you know, for example, this week, like I got asked, like, am I going to get fired from my job? Important to be able to say, I don't know that. I don't know that. But what I can see is this. And so it's always be clear about what you can't see, but don't leave it there. Say, yes, you know, no, and this is what I can see. That your career is going through a change, that there is something here that needs to change and will change, but I don't know if that means it's going to be this job or another job. You know, let's talk about it. What's your intuition? Where's your heart at? What are you seeing? And hand the power back to the person instead of pretending to claim that you have some pronouncement or authority on their life, which we don't.
Yeah, so important, so important. There are the two last questions. The next one is, what is your greatest satisfaction you get from your work as an astrologer? one or two things, maybe.
The joy of a person coming home to themselves, accepting themselves, loving themselves, honoring themselves. Because when we do that, when we love ourselves, when we forgive ourselves, we're kinder, better, more creative human beings in all our relations. And so I just love getting to help hold space for and facilitate a person having that homecoming. Um, and so that's probably one of my greatest satisfactions. I think my other greatest satisfaction right now, because I'm doing a lot of supervision and consultation for
Mhm.
therapists who bring astrology into their practice, which is where a lot of my passion is right now. And just seeing a person go from feeling like they're in the dark to being in the light. And there's something about the magic of that moment that I just feel so honored to be a part of.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say one of my greatest joys is the feeling of the destined meeting. Yvonne Smith Klitzner has done work on this, when it just feels like that client was meant to show up with you specifically on that day, and to actually be able to see that in your synastry with the client, with the transits of that day. You know, I love that moment when, oh, we had to reschedule the meeting 3 times, but then on the day that we end up being able to meet, you know, the sun or Mercury or another inner planet is exactly on the spot that needs to be talked about that day, and is so rich, and it also connects to the synastry that you have with the client, and you know, you're changed and healed and grow as the astrologer, you know, through getting able to show up for your client in that way. And there's this mutual transformation and a kind of synergy.
Yeah, there's synchronicity there
Yeah.
also, so much. Yeah. We have already touched a little bit on all throughout the interview, but are there any common misconceptions from your point of view about astrology that you would like to correct or highlight?
I would. Sometimes astrology gets called a pseudoscience. And what I want to say to that is astrology is not a pseudoscience because it's not a science.
Yeah.
So something can only be a pseudoscience if it's claiming to be a science, and it's not.
Yeah.
It includes science in the sense of astronomy,
Mhm.
that is a science, and it was considered the original science, but in the modern sense, it is not science. So
Mhm.
I want my science to be science and not pseudoscience, and I want my astrology to be astrology, and it can't be pseudoscience because it's not science. So
Yeah.
that's my main highlight.
Wonderful. And yours, Travis, if different.
Misconception. I mean, the thing that comes to mind is, yeah, again, what astrology can tell you and what it can't. And, you know, very contra a fatalistic astrology, of course. And I
Mhm.
think there's just so much flexibility and depth to the archetypes. And just, yeah, to come back to some of these points, there's such a range of manifestation of any combination or any transit that you have to come to it with such humility and such curiosity and so much
Yeah.
listening to be like, well, how's this going to show up for me? And to look at your life and not have these preconceptions. I think if you can really get to that place with astrology, you see that it's so wide and deep, and there's nothing clockwork or fatalistic about it at all. But it really asks that humble listening of us. And I hate when I see astrology wielded as a tool that has all the answers or
Yeah.
can be boiled down to one specific thing happening.
It's a form of art, I guess, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so more than anything. I think it's
Yeah.
that. And it's, it's mythopoetic and
Yeah,
it's symbolic. And so
absolutely.
it's a different, it's a different state of consciousness
Hmm.
than the rational, logical, linear mind. And
Yeah,
that's needed.
Yeah, I'd say it's a way of coming into artful relationship with the divine.
absolutely.
I like
And
that.
It
we
helps
are
you to
always
hear
trying,
what's
yeah, sorry, we are always trying to measure it through the eyes of science. That's why it, as it can't be measured by those Well, it
Does it have
doesn't
the
have
same
the same
metrics?
yeah, the same metrics.
Yes.
Absolutely,
Metrics?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Did
yeah.
I hear that?
Got that?
Translation, you know French.
He knows French, and I know it through osmosis.
More and more.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why maybe we are always trying to reason it from that point of view, and it's from the art point of view. So of course it can't give you the same results that we are expecting.
Yeah, it makes me so sad when we try to force it
Mhm.
into this other way. Just get this image of like being strangled or like stomped on, and it's like, no, we're bowing before the mystery, and we don't know. Nobody knows why
Yeah.
it works or how we got here. Nobody knows the answer to that, and that's okay.
Mhm.
It always makes me think of that scene from Aladdin when you try too hard to figure it out, and he's like, phenomenal cosmic powers, pretty living space. Don't put my
Yeah.
divine in that little box.
Well, I got
Um,
the divine in my box. Sorry.
so what do you have coming up next? This interview is starting in well, the series will be starting on my YouTube channel in September. Do you have something for the fall coming?
On September 21st, there is a lunar eclipse that's going to be exactly opposite the Saturn Neptune. And so I'm going to be giving a free astrology lecture that day on the Saturn Neptune
Oh,
conjunction
wonderful.
that everyone is welcome to. You just go to trustpsyche.com and enter your email and register for free and come join us live or recorded. We'd absolutely love to see you. And then next year, we're going to be teaching together on you can say what it is.
Yeah, an archetypal approach to the signs and houses. So this again will be, simple foundational concepts, but revisiting them in a rich way that I think will be interesting and applicable to both beginners but also advanced practitioners. Yeah, and just using the archetypal approach, which really puts the planets first, and how can we look through that lens and understand the signs and houses from that place, and even enrich our kind of first degree understanding of them and unfold them more deeply.
Weaving the archetypal fabric. Love it.
Ooh. Yes, weaving, and you can knit and crochet at the same time.
Embroidery, everything. Wonderful. So thank you so much for doing this with me. And it was wonderful to have you here for this first episode. Yeah, I wish you all the best and everything good for you and your beautiful family.
Oh, Sophia, you're such a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With you today.